So you're recovering from an injury, but you're struggling to get back to the gym due to a fear of judgment. Well, here's an important quote to remember. Lifting less weight doesn't mean regression if it's done with the intention for long-term progression. Hi guys, Robin here with another mental workout to give you the mental tools to achieve your physical goals. So you probably clicked on this video because you're struggling to get back to the gym after a long-term injury. You want to go to the gym, you want to train and get back to your best. However, what you're doing in the gym is nowhere near your previous standards, and you're starting to have that voice of doubt creep in as you notice a little bit of fear of judgment from other people in the gym. So before you start questioning your confidence, saying that you've lost it and questioning your ability as an athlete, this is going to happen. It's because you're starting to experience a challenge to your identity. Every time that you go to the gym, rather than it being a time for you to improve yourself, it feels like an arena to prove yourself. Because I'm sure some of you, if you could, you would walk around with a stick on your back that says, "I normally lift more than this, by the way." Just so people know that what you're lifting isn't a representation of your abilities as an athlete. So naturally, rather than putting yourself in this identity threatening position, you skip the gym. And one day turns into two, turns into three, turns into a week, a month, and we start to get into this self-sabotage cycle where we're not actually improving or recovering from our injury because of a mental barrier. And now that's important to note. Physically, you did have a barrier because of your injury, but it's now developed into a mental injury that we need to also rehab too. So we need to rehab your brain, because currently what it's wired to do is to tell you not to go to the gym because it sees it as a threatening place to challenge your identity. So you may as well just not go there in the first place to save your own confidence and self-belief. And this is all fueled by other people's perceptions of your ability and of you as a person. And that's natural. We care what people think because ultimately we want people to see us in the same light that we see ourselves. If you don't, then that causes some anxiety, as there's an incongruency between our belief of self and others' perception of that. This challenge is occurring every single time that we go to the gym, and it's reducing our confidence and our motivation. So we just avoid the gym altogether, although in doing so, we actually push ourselves further away from the ideal self that we believe ourselves to be. So as time goes on, we actually become the person that we're worrying others are thinking that we are. So the question to consider is going to the gym and having others see you lift less weight more of a threat to your identity than you not going to the gym at all and halting your progression altogether? Now, some of you are probably thinking, Robin, I've had that thought, I've had that debate myself constantly, it's getting tiring, and it's still not doing anything to improve my situation. Okay, so now I'm going to go through some tips to help raise your confidence so that you can go into the gym without that fear of what other people are thinking. So identity is the big thing, and that's what we need to work on if we're going to make sure that we feel confident to get into the gym and stop worrying about what others are thinking, potentially thinking of us. You need to know that your identity is fueled by two things: your perception of self and others' perception of you. A heavy reliance on the latter, so others' perceptions of us, creates a dependency. And now with any dependency, if we're starved of it, then it's going to lead to becoming quite anxious. And this anxiety is what's depleting our confidence. When we're at the top of our game and everything's going great, our training's brilliant and we're performing really well, then there's no shortage of people giving us compliments and saying how good we are and how amazing we look or how brilliant our form is. But in this situation, when we're returning from injury, maybe we're not going to get those comments. So that reliance on other people and their perception of us isn't there. So what we're left with is just our perception of self. And if that's not strong enough, then our confidence isn't going to be high at all. Therefore, we want to work on creating an internal shift, moving your perception of your identity towards what you perceive yourself to be, rather than what others perceive you to be. This is going to create a stable identity, which is a strong foundation to help us return to the gym from injury. So here are 3 things to work on to create that internal shift. Number 1, get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. Cliche, I know. The reality is you've made a choice to try and get back to the gym and get back to fighting fit. And with that comes the inevitable self-doubt as you try to restore your confidence levels. And whilst injury may have not physically been the most comfortable, mentally there's been a level of comfort as we've managed to hide and protect our identity behind the injury, because we're not doing anything in the spotlight and allowing people to judge us. But now that we're starting to take those first few baby steps out of the dark, the spotlight is starting to come onto us, meaning that mentally we're starting to feel a little bit of discomfort that we're not used to whilst we've been injured. Therefore, reminding yourself that first of all, this is a choice, but second of all, we're just starting to stretch our mental comfort levels as we go through this mental rehab. This level of acceptance will allow us to sit with those uncomfortable emotions of doubt and handle them better. As this is a short-term sensation, not too dissimilar to how you might feel after pushing a really hard set and you're starting to see stars, but rather than it being physically taxing, it's just a little bit of mental tax. Number 2, don't fixate on the numbers. Now I know that's easier said than done, because when we get back to the gym, we worry about other people seeing us lift less weight. However, what you've got to remember is that they don't have your gym logbook. They don't know what your last lift was, and they don't know what RPE you're training at. Just because you're aware that this is maybe 30 kilograms less than what you're used to lifting, doesn't mean that they're going to be the progressive overload police checking in on what you're actually lifting to make sure that you have hit the numbers that you should be. Just because you know that you're lifting less than usual, doesn't mean that other people know that too. The reality is, people are worrying about little things in the gym about what other people are seeing, whether that be their form, whether it be the weight they're lifting, or maybe even the gym clothes that they're wearing. So an easy way to combat that is finding other ways that you can measure success, rather than just quantitatively, so the kilograms on the bar, but maybe through your enjoyment levels, maybe through trying a new exercise, maybe through the way that you manage to actually handle your negative voice during that gym session. Finding various ways to measure your performance in the gym that doesn't place the onus on the numbers will mean that we can build your confidence up through qualitative and more descriptive evidence. And finally, number 3, growth mindset. Approaching a session with a growth mindset is incredibly important. However, when we return from injury, we sort of blow that out of the water because we expect to be able to lift our PRs, train for a grueling hour straight away, and all it's going to do is knock our confidence. We find ourselves on a figurative treadmill that's going way too fast, and with a carrot dangled at the end, which is the successful session, that's just out of reach because the high expectations that we're setting ourselves and performance demands mean that we're not going to be able to obtain that. So setting an appropriate level of challenge will help cultivate that growth mindset. Rather than 100%, maybe just drop down to 70%. Something still challenging, but attainable. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't have to stay like that forever. You can actually progressively overload that over time, rather than your numbers, maybe your perceived effort that you put in. But initially, it's going to be incredibly important as it's going to allow you to build that confidence muscle. That wraps up today's mental sweat. I hope that you found today's video quite helpful and it helps you on your return from injury, making sure that you feel confident and eliminate that voice of doubt when we're starting to worry about judgment from other people in the gym. If you enjoyed the video, then consider giving this a like and maybe even subscribing if you want more content of this nature, and keep me up to date in the comments with how things are going for you for your return from injury. And I'll see you soon for another mental workout.